"Why does your daughter look exactly like me?" The words dropped into the room the way a glass drops on a stone floor. Everyone heard it. Nobody moved. Daniel Harper didn't flinch. He stood still, the way a man stands when he has been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and can finally feel the weight beginning to shift. He looked down at Lily, 7 years old, dark almond eyes wide open, her small hand tightening around his, steady, certain, completely unafraid. Then he looked back at Evelyn Carter. He gave her a sad, gentle smile, the kind that holds more history than most people carry in a lifetime. "She doesn't just look like you," he said softly. "She is your daughter." The crystal chandeliers scattered light across the exhibition hall like sunlight through old lace. Somewhere behind them, a champagne glass clinked. Someone whispered. The entire room held its breath. Evelyn Carter, CEO of Carter Technologies, the woman whose name appeared on whiteboards from Detroit to Dallas. She stood completely still. Her composure cracked. Like glaze on good pottery dropped on a kitchen floor. Her eyes dropped to the child's wrist, a silver bracelet, tiny, tarnished with time, engraved with a single letter, E. She had last seen that bracelet 7 years ago, and the man before her, in a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit, hands rough and faintly stained with engine oil, had kept it, all this time, quietly, without asking for a single thing in return. Daniel Harper, 36. His world was grease-stained work orders, the hum of a garage compressor, and the sound of Lily's laugh filling their small apartment on Birchwood Lane. He drove a truck with a cracked dashboard and a heater that worked when it felt like it. He packed Lily's lunches with a note folded inside, a tiny drawing of a sun wearing sunglasses. Because she'd asked him once why the sun never looked happy. He started drawing it happy every single day since. It was Lily's painting that had brought them here tonight. Love Makes Us Family. A school art competition, a citywide exhibition. Daniel had ironed his good shirt. Lily had worn her yellow dress with the white buttons. Neither of them had imagined what was waiting. Now, standing beneath those chandeliers, with Lily's hand warm in his, Daniel thought of something his late wife used to whisper. "Some things find you, Daniel. You don't have to go looking." Whatever came next, he already knew one thing. He would protect Lily, no matter what it cost him. What he didn't know yet was that this woman had crossed his path before, on a rainy night 8 years ago, when everything in her world was coming apart at the seams. 8.5 years ago, Daniel Harper's world had a different shape. A wife named Clara, a small apartment that smelled like pot roast on Sundays, a baby on the way. He was not rich, never had been, but he had the kind of contentment that doesn't require much explaining. The kind you feel when someone you love is asleep in the next room and the bills are mostly paid. Clara died on a Tuesday in February. Complications during delivery. The baby did not survive either. Daniel didn't talk about it, not to anyone. He carried grief the way some men carry a wallet, always with him, never on display. What he did instead was work. Days at the garage, nights behind the wheel of his old taxi, ferrying strangers across the city in the rain, in the cold, in the particular loneliness of 2 in the morning when the radio plays songs you didn't ask for. Some nights he'd sit in the parked truck before going inside. Not because he was tired, because the apartment was so quiet. Clara had hummed while she washed dishes, nothing in particular, just a low, wandering sound that meant someone was there. Without it, the silence had a texture he never got used to. He kept her mason jar on the windowsill, fresh flowers every other Friday, the cheap bundles near the register. Whatever was in season. Lily would eventually ask why he bought flowers for a jar with no one to give them to. They're for remembering, and remembering is a kind of love too. She accepted this the way children accept true things, completely, without argument. It was on a stormy Thursday in March, 7 years ago, that everything changed. He was idling outside the hospital when a figure in a long coat slipped into the back seat. No greeting, just a street address. Daniel drove. 2 blocks from the drop-off, he heard it. A sound so small he almost thought he'd imagined it. He pulled over, looked back. Tucked against the back seat, wrapped in a pink flannel blanket the color of a faded peony, was a newborn baby girl. Eyes closed, fists curled, a tiny silver bracelet on her wrist engraved with a single letter. E. 30 seconds. Rain on the roof, city lights sliding through the windows. Then he called the police. They came. They took statements. The passenger who had left her could not be located. No mother came forward. No family filed any inquiry. Weeks passed. After long shifts, Daniel returned to the hospital in his work clothes, hands still carrying the day's grease. He'd sit beside the bassinet and simply be there. The nurses started calling him the mechanic dad. He never corrected them. When the court declared the child eligible for adoption, Daniel Harper filed the paperwork alone. A folding table, a county office, a water-stained ceiling tile overhead. He signed every page without hesitation. He named her Lily, after the flowers Clara had kept in a mason jar on the windowsill. What Daniel could not have known was what had happened on the other side of that night. Across the city, a 27-year-old woman named Evelyn Carter had signed a temporary guardianship agreement under tremendous pressure. Trusting a man named Victor, her father's longtime financial advisor, to keep her daughter safe until she stabilized the family business. Weeks, not years, that was what she believed. Victor paid someone to make the situation disappear, without a word to Evelyn. When she discovered what he had done, she hired investigators, 3 of them, over 4 years. She found nothing. She kept that loss locked in a room inside herself. And she kept working. Raising Lily alone was not a picture-perfect thing. There were nights Daniel fell asleep at the kitchen table with her half-finished homework between his elbows. Mornings, he packed her 2 of the same sandwich because he'd been too tired to think straight. Once, he showed up to her Thanksgiving pageant still in his garage uniform, a smear of grease on his forearm from the craft project they'd done the night before. But he was there, every performance, every fever, every nightmare at 2 in the morning when she'd pad to his doorway in her socks and whisper, "Dad, the dark is too loud." He'd get up, every time. He'd sit on the edge of her bed until she drifted off, even when he had a 5 o'clock shift waiting. He taught her to draw using Clara's old colored pencils, still in the tin with the dented lid. He braided her hair by watching the same tutorial video 17 times. He repaired neighbors' cars for free, especially the single mothers on their street. The ones holding everything together on one income and sheer stubbornness. He never advertised it, he just did it. Lily noticed. Children always notice the things adults think go unseen. One afternoon, she looked up from her coloring book. "Dad, why do you fix Miss Patty's car for free?" "Because she's doing the hard thing alone. And when someone's doing the hard thing alone, you help if you can." She pressed a little harder on the yellow crayon, the way a child does when something lands and she doesn't have words for it yet. He said it often enough it became the rhythm of their house. "Kindness is the strongest tool you'll ever have, my girl. It always finds its way back to you." She believed him completely. When Lily's school sent home the flyer for the citywide art competition, sponsored by Carter Technologies, Daniel stuck it to the refrigerator with the pineapple magnet. "You should enter," he said. "What should I draw?" "Draw what you know." She drew the 2 of them at the kitchen table, his rough hand next to her small one. She titled it, "Love Makes Us Family," in her careful, looping handwriting. She won first place. And so they had come to this hall, these chandeliers, this moment. Evelyn Carter was looking at his daughter, with an expression Daniel recognized from only one other place, the mirror. The morning after Clara died, like someone standing at the edge of something vast and irreversible, with no way to go but forward. What was about to come out of her mouth would shatter the composed, untouchable image she had spent 7 years rebuilding, right there, in front of everyone. Daniel told it the way he always did things, quietly, without flourish, in the order it happened: the storm, the cab outside the hospital, the sound from the back seat that stopped him cold, the pink blanket and the silver bracelet, the hospital visits after long shifts, the paperwork at the folding table. 7 years of packed lunches and braided hair and crayon drawings and one man's steady, faithful love. He didn't deliver it as an accusation. He didn't raise his voice. He laid it out the way you set the contents of a cedar chest on a bed when it's finally time for things to be seen. Carefully, one by one, nothing hidden. The room stayed quiet, in a way rooms rarely do. Not the polite quiet of a formal event, the deep, suspended quiet of people who have stopped pretending to look at the paintings on the walls. Evelyn stood very still through all of it. Her face was controlled, just barely. The way ice on a March pond looks solid until you notice the dark water moving underneath. When Daniel finished, she didn't speak right away. She looked at Lily. Lily looked back at her, steady, serious. Those dark almond eyes that didn't miss much. Then Lily said, in the uncomplicated way of a 7-year-old who simply observes what's in front of her, "You have the same eyes as me." Something moved across Evelyn's face that didn't belong to the CEO. Something much older, much more fragile. Something that had been locked away for 7 years in a room she never let herself enter. She turned slightly away, one hand pressed briefly, tightly, to her chest. She didn't hold it together. It came out in pieces. There in that gleaming hall, in front of board members and nonprofit donors and a photographer who later had the quiet decency to delete every photo taken in those particular minutes. 7 years earlier, Evelyn had been 27. The company her father had built was bleeding money. Creditors were circling. Her board of directors, all older, all entirely certain they knew better than she did, were actively threatening to push her out. The pressure had been relentless, coming from every direction at once. In the middle of all of it, she had given birth, quietly, privately. She had not intended to give her daughter up. That was the truth she needed someone to understand. She had signed a temporary guardianship agreement, trusting a man named Victor, her father's longtime financial advisor, someone she had known since she was a child, to protect her daughter until she steadied the company. She had believed, fully and foolishly, that it was a temporary measure. Weeks, not years. Victor had not protected her daughter. He had paid a stranger to make the situation disappear entirely, without a word to Evelyn. When she discovered what he had done, she came apart in a way she had never allowed herself to before or since. She hired private investigators, 3 of them, over 4 years. She reviewed every lead personally. She followed every thread until it frayed into nothing. She had found nothing. What Evelyn did not tell the room, what she had never told a single living person, was what she had done every year on the date she last held her daughter. She bought a birthday cake, a small one, from the bakery on Clement Street that had been there since before she was born. She brought it home, set it on the kitchen counter, lit the candles, stood there alone in her quiet apartment and said out loud into the empty room, "Happy birthday." Then she blew out the candles herself, because there was no one else to do it. 7 cakes, 7 years, alone in a kitchen that cost more money than most people earned in a year, talking to a child she couldn't find. She had buried the grief under ambition, under 18-hour days, under the relentless forward motion of a company that needed her to be made of something harder than ordinary people. And she had told herself it was discipline, that it was strength. Standing here now, in front of this man she had looked down on without knowing anything about him, she understood for the first time that it had not been strength. It had been the longest, loneliest apology she had ever made. She rebuilt the company from its wreckage and made it powerful. She told herself that if she became successful enough, visible enough, perhaps someday her daughter would find her. What she had not let herself imagine, because it was too enormous, too painful, was that her daughter might already be loved, already safe, already the center of someone else's whole world. A private DNA test was arranged within 48 hours. It confirmed what the silver bracelet and those matching eyes had already told everyone in the room. Lily Harper was Evelyn Carter's biological daughter. Daniel stood in the clinic hallway afterward, hands in his jacket pockets, waiting. Lily sat on the bench beside him, drawing a horse on the back of a blood pressure pamphlet she'd plucked from the wall rack. completely absorbed. When Evelyn walked out holding the results, her face looked like a woman handed something precious and enormous, who doesn't yet know whether she's allowed to hold it. She looked at Daniel. He looked at the document. He nodded once. She exhaled. Long. Unsteady. The way a person breathes when they have been holding something in for 7 years and finally, cautiously, set it down. Then Evelyn Carter did something none of her board members, none of the investors, none of the journalists who had covered her professional rise had ever witnessed. She cried. Not quietly. Not with any composure. The full weight kind. The kind that comes when a person has been very brave for a very long time, and the bravery finally runs out. Daniel didn't move toward her. He didn't move away. He stood there, solid, unhurried, completely present. The way a decent man stands when someone near him is falling apart and doesn't need fixing. Just witness. When she collected herself, she looked at his hands, really looked at them. The scarred knuckles, the shadow of engine oil under his nails that no amount of scrubbing fully removes. The callus along his right palm from years of torque wrenches and cold mornings in an unheated garage. Hands that had braided a little girl's hair, packed her lunches, drawn sons with sunglasses on folded paper, bought cheap flowers every other Friday for a mason jar by a window. Evelyn's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. How can someone with so little give so much? Daniel glanced at Lily. She had progressed to drawing a saddle on her pamphlet horse with complete concentration. The tip of her tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth. I gave her what I had, he said quietly. Turns out, that was enough. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. For the first time in years, she had no prepared response. No strategy, no next move already mapped. Just silence, and something new taking root in it. In 3 days, Evelyn Carter would make Daniel an offer, and his answer would force her to confront everything she thought her money and her power actually meant. The offer came on a Wednesday afternoon, in a conference room on the 14th floor of the Carter Technologies building. Glass walls, gray carpet, a view of the city that cost more per square foot than Daniel's monthly rent. Evelyn was composed again, armor back in place, hands folded on the table. She slid a sealed envelope across the polished surface toward him. He didn't open it. He just looked at her. $10 million, she said. A full custody arrangement. A complete college trust for Lily. Every resource I have access to. She held his gaze. You're a good man, Mr. Harper, but you're a mechanic. I can give her opportunities you simply can't. Schools, travel, a future without financial worry. Step aside. And Lily will never want for anything. The room was very quiet. Daniel looked at the envelope, then back at her. Money can't buy what Lily already has, he said. A father who shows up. 7 years of showing up. That's not a role you replace with a wire transfer, no matter how many zeros are on it. He stood, pushed his chair back in, the way a man does when he was raised to leave a table the way he found it. He walked to the door. She knows one dad, he said, without turning around. That's not going to change. It was the first time in Evelyn Carter's professional life that someone had turned her down without deliberating. Not for a moment. She sat in that conference room alone for a long time afterward, the envelope untouched in front of her, looking at the skyline as if it might offer some explanation. It didn't. For the first time, her power had met something it simply could not move. That evening, Lily asked Daniel a question at the dinner table. She had been quiet on the drive home. Unusual for her. A child who typically treated a 10-minute car ride as an opportunity to cover topics ranging from the structural soundness of bird nests to whether clouds had feelings. Daniel noticed. He didn't push. He made grilled cheese, set the plates down, waited. Finally, pushing a triangle of sandwich around her plate, Lily said, "Is that lady going to take me away?" Daniel set down his fork. He had known this question was coming. He'd been turning it over since the exhibition. How to explain something this large and this delicate to a 7-year-old who deserved nothing but the truth? Held gently. "No," he said. "Nobody is taking you anywhere." "But she's my..." She's someone who loves you, he said carefully. Same as I do. That's not a competition, Lily. Love doesn't work that way. It doesn't get smaller when there's more of it. Lily considered this with the gravity she brought to all serious matters. Like how you said kindness doesn't run out? Exactly like that, he said. She picked up her sandwich, took a bite, then around a mouthful of cheese. She doesn't know how to braid hair, though. No, Daniel said, she does not. You'll have to teach her. He looked at his daughter, this small, certain person who had arrived in his life in a pink blanket on a rainy night, and had never once doubted that she was exactly where she belonged. Yeah, he said, I probably will. 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday night in October, Lily's fever climbed to 103. Daniel sat on the edge of her bed for hours, a cool cloth folded on her forehead, one large hand resting lightly on her back, whispering the kinds of things you say to a sick child when it's late and the apartment is quiet, and you need her to feel less alone in it. Old songs Clara used to hum, slow, wandering made-up stories about a family of ducks who lived under a highway overpass and had very firm opinions about puddles. He did not sleep. Around midnight, he heard the soft click of the front door. He had given Evelyn a spare key 2 weeks earlier, at the pediatrician's recommendation, as Lily's biological parent of legal record. He had not expected her to use it at midnight on a Tuesday. She appeared in the hallway, looked at him through the bedroom doorway. Neither of them spoke. Then she went to the kitchen. What followed was the sound of someone attempting, with great sincerity and almost no applicable skill, to prepare rice porridge from a bag she had apparently purchased at a drugstore on the way over. A cabinet opened, closed, opened again. Something clinked. A long pause followed. The particular pause of a person reading the back of a package very carefully under fluorescent light. It took 45 minutes. The porridge came out too thick and faintly oversalted. She brought it in, set it on the nightstand, stood there. Daniel looked at the bowl, then at her. It's not terrible, he said. An unfamiliar sound came from her, small and surprised. It might have been a laugh. Don't tell anyone, she said. He fed Lily slow spoonfuls until she settled back into sleep. Evelyn sat in the chair in the corner and stayed. The radiator ticked. The streetlight through the curtain made a soft grid across the floor. Neither of them needed to fill the silence. Around 2 in the morning, Daniel looked across the dim room at this woman who had walked in off the street at midnight to make bad porridge for a sick child she was still learning to know. He said quietly, not as a lecture, as the plainest truth he'd arrived at after 36 years of living. Real success isn't sitting alone at the top. It's having someone waiting for you at home. Evelyn turned away slightly. Her jaw moved. She pressed the back of her hand against her eye. When she turned back, her expression was composed. But something behind it had shifted in a way it wouldn't shift back. After that night, she started coming around, not formally, not with schedules or ground rules. She'd appear on Saturday mornings with grocery bags that revealed she had consulted nobody. 2 kinds of expensive mustard, a bag of blood oranges. On one memorable occasion, a small jar labeled artisanal honey butter that Lily examined carefully before announcing it tasted like a candle. Daniel added it to the back of the cupboard with the respectful silence of a man who did not want to make anyone feel bad. She sat at the kitchen table for Sunday dinners. She colored in Lily's coloring books with remarkable precision, staying carefully inside every line. A habit, Daniel suspected, that had less to do with art and more to do with years of controlling everything she possibly could. Slowly, she started letting the crayons stray a little. Their conversations deepened. They talked about her father's company and his years in the cab, the strange loneliness that can live inside a full calendar, the strange fullness that can live inside a modest life. She asked him once, carefully, almost carefully enough that he wouldn't notice the real question underneath. Doesn't it cost you, always being kind? Don't people take advantage? He turned it over for a moment. Sometimes, he said, but the alternative costs more. She was quiet for a good while after that. What she didn't say, what she was only beginning to understand, was that the faint, familiar smell of engine oil on his jacket had quietly become the smell of steadiness. The way a porch swing that's always creaked the same way stops being a flaw and starts being the whole point. One evening, Lily looked up from her drawing pad and said, to no one in particular, in the offhand way of a child who considers the matter already settled, "I like it when she stays for dinner." Daniel didn't say anything. He smiled into his coffee cup. Within 10 days, a crisis would hit Carter Technologies, and the person who kept it from collapsing would be someone Evelyn had once tried to pay to walk away. The news broke on a Monday morning. Carter Technologies' new self-driving prototype had failed a public safety demonstration in front of the company's largest institutional investors. Not a minor failure. During a controlled test run, the vehicle's braking system shut down without warning at speed. The car traveled 17 seconds with no driver input and no override response before it was manually stopped. No one was hurt, but the footage spread quickly. By noon, the board had called an emergency session. By 3 in the afternoon, the company's stock had dropped 11%. The projected financial loss was $50 million. 412 people, engineers, technicians, operations staff, many of them single parents holding their families together on careful monthly budgets, were facing the real possibility of layoffs. Evelyn sat alone in her office that evening. The city spread below her through the glass, indifferent and glittering. She had rebuilt this company once from ruins her father left behind. Sitting there in the quiet, she honestly wasn't sure she had a second rebuilding in her. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from a number saved simply as D. "I have an idea if you're willing to hear it." Daniel arrived the next morning in his good jacket, the same one from the art exhibition, still slightly too wide in the shoulders. He was carrying a legal pad with 3 pages of careful handwriting. He set it on her desk without ceremony. A free community repair day, open to all Carter Technologies employees and their families. He would organize it himself. His tools, his time, his garage connections. "People are afraid," he said, "not just of losing their jobs. They feel like the ground shifted and nobody told them. You address that first. You remind them that someone sees them. Everything else gets easier after that." Evelyn looked at the legal pad, then at him. "You're going to fix cars," she said. "I'm going to listen to people," he said. "The cars are just the reason to show up." A pause. "All right," she said. She almost said something else, something about how this was not a real strategy, not something you could put in a board presentation or model in a spreadsheet. She almost said that feelings did not stop financial bleeding. But she looked at his handwriting on that legal pad. Careful, unhurried, every word earned. She thought about Lily on a Tuesday night in October, about the particular kind of results that never show up in quarterly reports. She didn't say the other thing. "All right," she said again, and this time she meant it completely. That Saturday, the Carter Technologies parking lot filled up in a way that parking lots rarely do. Not with the efficient, purposeful movement of a workday, but with the loose, uncertain energy of people who weren't entirely sure why they'd come and were glad they had anyway. Daniel worked from 7 in the morning until the light went orange and low. Oil changes, brake inspections, a transmission check, a check engine morning that turned out to be a loose gas cap. It made a tired young engineer laugh out loud, genuinely, completely, for the first time in 2 weeks. He also listened. That was the other thing. He moved through conversations the way he moved through his work, without rush, without an agenda, giving people the particular attention that says, "I am not somewhere else right now. You have my full presence." One engineer, a woman named Grace, 29 years old, a single mother with a boy in 3rd grade, stood beside her car after he'd replaced the serpentine belt and simply started crying. Not quietly, the whole chest kind that surprises the person doing it. She apologized immediately. Daniel folded a clean shop rag and held it out. "Take your time," he said. She did. She blew her nose. She straightened up. She said she needed to go back and look at the prototype data again. There was something she hadn't been able to see clearly when she was frightened, and she thought maybe now she could. She went back that afternoon. She reviewed the system code from the beginning, without the weight of panic pressing on her, and she found something. Not an engineering error, not a calculation flaw, a deliberate line of code, buried deep in a secondary system branch, designed to trigger a specific failure at a specific speed threshold, during exactly the kind of public demonstration that had taken place. Someone inside the company, someone with system-level access and a reason to want the project destroyed, had built the failure in from the start. She documented everything, removed the corrupted code, restored the system to its original design. The fix itself took 40 minutes. The courage to go back and look had taken a Saturday afternoon, and one man's quiet, unassuming kindness. The project was recoverable. Every job was intact. Evelyn had watched the afternoon through the security feed from her office. She watched Daniel move from car to car. She watched Grace sit in her grief, then stand up straight, then walk back inside. She watched her employees eat sandwiches together in the parking lot in the late afternoon sun. The kind of easy, unscheduled gathering that doesn't happen in boardrooms. She watched a man in a jacket that didn't quite fit give her company something no consultant, no crisis communications firm, no emergency board resolution had ever managed to provide. He had given them back themselves. When Grace presented her findings to the board on Monday morning, deliberate sabotage confirmed, the responsible party under formal investigation, the system fully restored. The room held that particular silence that follows genuine relief. Evelyn looked down at her hands for a long moment. Then she said, quietly enough that only the person beside her could hear, "He didn't just help my daughter. He showed this entire company that kindness saves more than power ever could." Buried in the company's own archived records was a discovery that would make every piece of this story suddenly, completely, irreversibly whole. It was in the old company records that she found it. Carter Technologies had maintained a community roadside assistance fund since its early years, a goodwill initiative her father started, something Evelyn had kept running the way you keep a porch light on after dark, out of habit, out of something that feels like hope even when you don't name it that. The records were scanned and archived going back 14 years, receipts, service logs, handwritten incident notes. She was searching for something related to the sabotage investigation when she came across the entry. Date: March 4th, 8 years prior. Incident: stranded motorist Route 9 during rain event. Service rendered by D. Harper, independent contractor. Notes: vehicle non-recoverable. Driver safely relocated at no charge. Below it, in careful, unhurried handwriting. Driver appeared very distressed. Before departure, contractor advised, "Someone is waiting for you at home." She read it twice. Then she sat very still. 8 years ago, a rainy night on Route 9. A young woman driving her father's company car after an impossible board meeting. Crying too hard to see clearly. Pulling off the road because she didn't trust herself to keep going. A mechanic who arrived. Did what he could and said the one thing that gave her enough reason to drive home. She hadn't looked at his face. She'd been too far inside whatever she was surviving that night to register anything except the kindness itself. Someone is waiting for you at home. She had gone home. And 3 weeks later, under pressure she still could not fully explain to herself, she had made the worst decision of her life. But a stranger's small act of kindness on a rain-soaked road had kept her moving long enough to reach the next morning. That stranger was Daniel, the same man who had found her daughter in the back of a cab that same year, and chosen, with no obligation and no reward, to love her. She sat there for a long time, holding that piece of paper, understanding something she had no language for yet. That kindness, real kindness, does not announce itself. It does not keep records or ask to be remembered. It simply acts, and then it moves on. And sometimes, years later, when you least expect it, it turns out to have been the hinge on which everything turned. She drove to his apartment that evening. Lily was already asleep. School night. Bedtime at 8:30. A routine Daniel kept the way good gardeners tend to soil. Consistently, without drama, because that's what makes things grow. He opened the door, took one look at her face, stepped aside. "Come in," he said. He didn't ask what was wrong. He put the kettle on. She sat at his kitchen table. the one under the pineapple magnet, and the crayon drawing of a family taped to the cabinet door, and she told him what she had found. All of it. She didn't perform composure. She didn't manage her delivery. She just told him the truth. The way he had always told her. He listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, looking at the table. "I didn't know it was you," he said finally. "On Route 9. I never knew." "I know," she said. "That's the part that gets me. You didn't do any of it because you knew. You just did it." He looked up at her. "That's what kindness is," he said simply. "You don't do it for the return. You just do it because the person in front of you needs it." Evelyn looked at her hands, her careful, unblemished hands, all the things those hands had signed and built and fought for. And none of it had come close to what this man had done with his. In 2 unremarkable moments, on 2 rainy nights, asking nothing in return. "I don't just want to be Lily's mother," she said. Her voice was steady, but only just. "I want to be with you, if you'll have me." Daniel smiled, not for effect, just the real thing. A little tired, very warm, and completely without pretense. "Real love doesn't happen overnight," he said. "It grows, through kindness, every single day." "I know," she said. "I'm asking if I can start." He slid a mug of tea across the table toward her. "You already started," he said. "Night of the porridge." She laughed, the kind that catches you off guard by being genuine. The months that followed were ordinary in all the best ways. Evelyn stepped back from the relentless pace. Not entirely, but meaningfully. She was at the dinner table on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She sat in the small plastic chairs at Lily's school events without checking her phone. She learned to fold laundry according to Lily's very particular system. Rules Daniel had memorized years ago and could no longer fully explain to anyone else. She learned to braid hair too. It took longer than 45 minutes, considerably longer. Lily sat on a kitchen chair and offered corrections with the patience of someone who had decided to find the process entertaining rather than frustrating. Daniel leaned against the doorframe and watched. He did not offer help until asked. He was not asked for 11 attempts. On the 12th, it was nearly right. "Almost," Lily said gravely. "Keep practicing." With Evelyn's genuine partnership, Daniel opened his own garage. He filed the paperwork at the same county office with the water-stained ceiling tile. Evelyn sat beside him at the folding table. He noticed her glance up at that tile the same way he had. All those years ago. Like a person marking a moment they intend to remember. One spring morning, Lily came downstairs in her socks, hair still undone, and found them both at the kitchen table. Daniel with his coffee, Evelyn with a legal brief and a piece of toast. Sharing the easy, unperforming quiet of 2 people who have stopped trying to manage each other and started simply sharing a morning. Lily looked at them. "Dad Daniel," she said. "Mom Evelyn." A pause. "We're a real family now, right?" Daniel looked at Evelyn. Evelyn looked at Daniel. He reached across the table and took her hand. Her smooth, careful hand in his rough, oil-shadowed one. "Yeah," he said. "We are." A year later, Lily stood at the front of a school auditorium and presented a new painting to the citywide competition. She had titled it, "My Family, Built by Love and Kindness." In the audience, a mechanic and a CEO sat side by side in folding chairs, shoulders touching, holding a program Lily had carefully decorated with a border of suns wearing sunglasses. Because in her family, the sun had always been happy. This story reminds us that kindness is not a small thing. It does not stay where you set it down. It moves through time, through rainy roads and 7 quiet years, and rooms full of crystal chandeliers. And it arrives, eventually, exactly where it was needed most. It reminds us that the truest families are not handed to us fully formed. They are built slowly, imperfectly, through the daily choice to show up, to be present, to say, when someone beside you is struggling, "I see you." Take your time. Someone is waiting for you at home. And sometimes, not always, but in the ways that matter most, kindness comes back. In a silver bracelet kept safe for 7 years. In a bowl of over-salted porridge made at midnight. In 11 failed braids and a 12th that was almost right. In a little girl standing in her socks at the kitchen door. looking at two people who found each other through the longest, most unlikely road imaginable, and choosing, on one ordinary morning, to call them her family. If this story touched your heart, comment heart if you believe kindness can change everything. Crafted by a human, accompanied by AI. This piece hopes to leave you with one feeling: that kindness is like tiny seeds, sometimes buried under dry, cracked soil, but with just a little patience and faith, they will sprout and paint an entire sky with color.